cold morning. So I've wrapped myself in my blanket this morning and I hope you're all comfortable at home. I would like to say thank you to everybody that sent me emails and questions and all the exercises that you've uploaded. So I went through all of them yesterday and I made a few notes. It's wonderful to see. It seems like you're enjoying yourself. I was so impressed with the pivot tables and the pivot charts that I saw. So that was really very cool. So thank you so much for that. I hope you found it useful. And please ask me any questions this morning that you might have. I might switch off my video this morning. I don't know, something is not really going so well with my internet. Sometimes it works really well and then it just everything slows down. So if you don't mind, I would rather share my screen and show you some functions, and I would like us to talk. There will be a recording. So Kristen is making a recording of this morning's session. It will be uploaded on Teams as well as on SunLearn. And so you will have many opportunities to look at this recording again afterwards. Also, please complete the evaluation forms that Kristen will put up the link for later on here in the chats. It's important for us to get feedback so that we can improve on this workshop. So I will try to remember by the end before we conclude this morning's session, but please complete the feedback for us. That's really important. Now, before I just continue with the few notes that I've made, so first, maybe let's discuss this. I'm going to continue with the VLOOKUP and the index and match functions because I think those are the two most important functions that you will use when you work with large data sets. So I just would like to conclude that. I didn't finish that last week. My time will just run out. And then we're going to look at pivot tables and pivot charts. And if there's more time, we can look at a few other things. But before I continue, is there anything from your side that you would like me to spend a bit of time and just show you anything that you struggled with? Any questions about the exercises or the notes that you've went through last week? Can I just see? Okay, but please stop me at any time if you have a question. I was really impressed with all the exercises that you've uploaded and the questions that you sent to me. It's always so nice to assist and help wherever I can. All right, so let's start this morning. I said in the beginning last week, it's important to understand your data and put down a few questions that you might want to answer at the end of the day, because then you know how to structure your data. Okay, what I mean by structuring your data, what's the column names that I need? For example, if I would like to add a slicer in a report, then I should know that the information under the column heading must represent whatever the items might be. So what do I mean by that? I'm just quickly going to switch off my camera and then share my screen with you. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen. So what we have here is we have some information about students. Now these are actually...
Sorry to interrupt. I can't see your screen just yet.
Okay, so it might be the internet. Thanks, Kristen. So I'm just going to give it a moment. I'm going to talk through it, and please just interrupt me and tell me when you can see my screen. Okay, so what we're going to look at is information about student enrollments. And I've got different academic years and different faculties and different departments. So for a column name, a heading, I will just have academic year, for instance. I will not have column headings 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, because if my years are column headings, then I can't use it as a slicer later on, and then I can't show ranges, date ranges, so to see if there's students, more students enrolled over different years, or it declined, whatever happens. So it's important to always think of your column headings. Kristen, can you give me an indication if you can see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Wonderful, thank you. So column A, I've got academic year, and then I've got all my years here. If I open the drop down, you'll see that I've got 2013, 14, 15, and so forth. And for faculties, I don't have the different faculties as my headings. I've got a faculty heading, and then I've got the list of all the different faculties underneath it. And then what I mean by slices, if I then create a pivot table report, then I can have a slicer. This is, for example, called a slicer. And here I've got my different academic years, so I can then just choose from a few years. If I didn't have an academic year as a column heading, this will not be possible. So always think of your end result. What would you like to see? And then decide on how your data should be structured. Okay, so that's also quite important. Now I'm going to get back to the VLOOKUP function. So I'm just going to, a quick way to just find one of my worksheets is, if I go just back, there's a little arrow showing to the right and to the left on the left-hand side in the left-hand corner of my screen. So if I just right-click, I can see all my worksheets in this workbook. So if I quickly would like to move to one, so for example, I would like to open sheet S7, then I can just click on it and say, okay. So this is a shortcut menu just to navigate inside a large workbook. Okay, so what does the VLOOKUP and the index and match functions do for us? They help us to expand our data set. So what we have here, just going to open my ribbon. So to open your ribbon, you can just double click on a tab. I have two tables here. It doesn't seem like it because it's quite small, but this is one table. This is a class list. And here I've got a different table. This table could have been anywhere. It can be on a different worksheet. It can be in a different workbook. But in effect, it's actually two different tables. And I would like to expand this table to add the data from the second table. So that is my end goal. And always try to do this in Excel when you do your data analysis. Try to add as much data in one table that you can, that makes sense. It has to make sense, otherwise you can't use it. Okay, but if I can add here, for example, the grades, the criteria, I can add it here. So I'm expanding this table so I don't have to work across two tables. And when we work with larger data sets, I'll show you a better example. But let's start with something very small. And please interrupt me at any time. I can't see the comments at this stage, so please just tell me if you have a question. So what do we want to do here? So I'm going to use two functions here, the if function and the VLOOKUP function. The if function just because it's really cool and I've used it quite a lot of times, so I just want to show you how it works. And then we're going to expand this table with the grading criteria. So what I want to see here is I would like to add 3 marks from the bonus table for students that always did their homework. So in the homework column, some of the students got an okay comment and some got a poor comment. So this might mean that some of the students didn't always do their homework, so they got a poor comment, and some students always handed in their homework so they got an okay comment. So for the students that got an okay comment, I would like to give them 3 marks bonus. And I'm going to use the 3 marks from the bonus table. I'm not just going to add 3 marks because next year it might be 2 points bonus or 5 points. I can change it then next year without going and updating all my information all the time. Now, in the notes, I refer to referencing in Excel and then especially absolute referencing and relative referencing. Now, those of you that have done some of the functions, when you copy a function down, usually what we will say is give me the average of test 1 to 4. You get an answer and then you, in the right hand corner, you copy and you drag it down for the rest. So Excel will know when I get to the second student, it will have a look at the test scores of the second student. And when I get to the third student, it will have a look at the third student's test scores. And so when I copy it down, we refer to this as relative referencing. But if I would like to use the same information for all the students, I would like in this function to go back to this specific cell with this information in it. Now, when we click on a cell, it's actually got an address, and we can see it here on the left-hand side in the name box. It says currently M2. So this is in column M, row 2, and this is a cell address. So Excel is going to take this address and use the information in here for my formula. Now, when I add this in a formula and I copy it down and I do not lock this cell, what will happen is when I get to the second student, Excel will move one row down here. And when I get to the third student, it will move another row down. And so it will continue moving down if I do not lock the cell. So when I say I'm locking the cell, I'm going to select it, create an absolute reference to this cell. So when I copy this information down, it will always go back to this specific cell. Okay, so let's use this as an example to make a bit more sense. Okay, so the function I'm going to use is the if function. For this, I'm going to do the long route. I'm going to go to the formulas tab. In the function library, I'm going to click on logical because the if function falls under logical. And here's the if function. So I would like to ask Excel, go and have a look at the homework. Doesn't matter if it says okay or poor, I just take the first homework. And then I say, is this equal to okay in double inverted commas? Because I'm referring to a string, so Excel can't read. It can't say, okay means this and poor means something else. So we put this in double inverted commas. So we say, is the information in this cell equal to okay? If it is equal to okay, what must happen? So value if true, it explains at the bottom what it means. If it is okay, then take the test average plus add 3 from the bonus table. But now I have to lock this cell. I can't just leave it as M2. So here I'm going to add $signs before the M and before the 2. So I'm making this an absolute reference. So it's locking this cell. So when I go move it down to copy it down to the next student and the third student, it always goes back to this specific cell. So value if false. If there's not an okay in the first homework comment, then what must happen? Just give the student his test average. I'm not going to deduct anything. I'm just bringing over the test average to the semester average. Okay, so always try to make sense of this. So I said, if the homework is okay, then take the test average and add 3 marks from the bonus table. But if it's not equal to okay, then just give him the test average. And let's see what happens, and let's copy this down. Now this is where the absolute referencing is important. When I copy it down, it has to go back to the M2. Every time I copy it down, it goes back to M2. If I didn't lock it, it would have moved down to M3, M4, M5, M6, and so forth. Okay, so let's just have a look. So the first one should not get an extra 3 marks bonus, so it stayed the same. But the next one, it was 95, now it's 98. So my function worked. I always look, it's one of the bottom ones. Okay, so then I'm happy with this. So just a nice function that you can do so much with. So this is a very, very basic example, but just think of all the things you can do with the if function. Okay, any questions? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this table with the information from this grading criteria table. And I'm going to use the VLOOKUP for this one. Now the VLOOKUP and the index and match functions are very similar, except that they say the index and match function can do a lot more with it. So there are a lot more advantages to using the index and match function in comparison to the VLOOKUP. The only thing is the VLOOKUP is a bit more popular because I think more people use it and they're not so familiar with index and match. But index and match is really, it takes a bit of exercise working with it, and then it's really fun to work with. Then you will never go back. But let's start with the VLOOKUP function. So I'm going to use the dialog window. So in the formulas, under the formulas tab in the function library group, under lookup and reference, I'm going to click on VLOOKUP. So VLOOKUPs, the function I'm going to use. The dialog window just assists me to say what I have to select where. You can just as well, I've said equals VLOOKUP, double click on it and complete the arguments, but this one, if you're not familiar with it, is quite easy to use. So it asks me what's the lookup value and explains here at the bottom exactly what it is. Now the VLOOKUP for this example is the semester average, because I would like to give a grading criteria to the semester average by looking at this grading criteria table. So the VLOOKUP value is the first semester average in this column. Then I go to the next argument. Now it asks me, where's this table? Where must I go and have a look for this information? So I select my table without the headings, only the information, and here it's important again to lock the columns and the rows. So F4 is a shortcut. If you have a look at 4 on your keyboard, there's a $ above it. So the F4, I'm just making my own, just to make it easier for myself. I just think of F4 as then the shortcut to add $ before the N and before the 3, before the O, before the 7. So I'm locking this whole table. Again, if I do not lock this and I copy this formula down to the second student, this will move down to another row and another row. So I will get the incorrect answers. Okay. Then the third argument is, from which column will the answer come from? So we've got 2 columns in this table, the one with the 0, 60, 70, 80, and 90, and column 2 has got the grading criteria, the F, the D, the C, the B, the A, and so forth. So my answers will come from the second column, column 2. So I put in a 2. And we will see later on that it can come from column 3 or column 5, or whichever column there is in your table that you would like to get the answers from. Okay, so the last argument now asks me, must this be an exact match or a close match? Now, when we work with 98.25 and 88 and 60.25, you will not find an exact match. So for a close match, we will just type in true. For an exact match, we would type in false. Okay, so for this example, we're just going to insert true. Let's just quickly go through the arguments. Lookup value is the semester average. The table, this is the table where I find my information from. The column, I find my answers from column 2, and this is a close match, so I type in true. And I copy my formula down. And I just check 1 or 2. So 60 is a D, 90 is an A, so my formula worked out well. So I can use the VLOOKUP to expand my data set. Now let's look at one that's a bit more complicated. Not complicated, just a bit more information around it. A larger data set. So here what I have, the SU Stats VLOOKUP. We talked about the student enrollments earlier. So I've got academic years, I've got faculty, departments, program names, degree names, and I've got gender, and I've got enrollments. But I would like to expand this table with qualification type and undergrad, postgrad qualifiers. So what do I have here? I've got programs and I've got degree names. Now to find this information, I've added a second table for you. Let me just move up. In this table, I only have degree names, qualification types, and undergrad, postgrad. So I say if it is a MSc Agri, then that's a master's degree and it's a postgraduate qualification. If it is, let's look for an undergrad, B.Agri, that's an undergrad bachelor's general qualification type, that's an undergrad qualification. So here I can use this information from this table and I can then complete this table, or I can expand the information in this table, and then later on I can use this table to do my analysis. Okay, rather than working with 2 separate tables. You can work with 2 separate tables, it's just a bit easier to do. So how can we use the VLOOKUP function to complete the qualification type and the undergrad postgrad? First, let's just understand our information. So my table that I will get the answers from, the degree name is in the first column. Then I've got the qualification type in column B. And in the third column or column C, I've got the undergrad, postgrad qualifiers. So now I can go back here. I will use the degree name to look up the qualification type, and the qualification type will be in column 2. Can you see? So this is column 1, so the information that I will look up is in column 2. So let's try this. I'm standing in the first cell where I would like to see my answer. My formulas tab is open, function library is open, and I'm going to look for the VLOOKUP function, just like we did in the previous sheet. The lookup value in this example would be the degree name. You agree? I'm using the degree name. Then it asks me for the table. So I'm going to go to the next sheet. This is where my table is. I'm selecting the whole table. So I'm using my shortcut. I press shift, right, and arrow down. So I'm selecting my table without selecting my headings. And then it asks me for the column. From which column would I like to fetch the answers? Remember, it's column 2 from the table that I've just selected. And then the last option, must it be an exact match or a close match? Now we're working with exact match. We're not working with a close match, so I can just type in false here. So the lookup value is the degree name. I've selected the whole table. The answer will come from column 2 and it must be an exact match. Then I say OK. And I copy it down. Then let's just check 1 or 2. A PhD is a doctoral degree. MPhil is a master's degree. Postgrad diploma is a postgrad diploma. Okay, so let's complete this. So for undergrad, postgrad, remember this is now from column 3. So we're going to use the VLOOKUP function again. The lookup value, I'm going to select the degree name again. The table array, this is the next argument. I'm selecting my whole table. Can you see the marching ants around it? So I just use the shortcut shift, control, arrow down, arrow to the right, or arrow down, arrow to the left to select my table. I'll lock my cells. Then the column, it will be column 3 now because I'm looking for undergrad, postgrad. The answer will come now from column 3. And again, this must be an exact match. Okay. So these are all postgrad. Let's just look for an undergrad. There's undergrad, bachelor's. So my function worked out perfectly. Then from here, I can then analyze my data in different ways by using creating a pivot table, pivot chart, and so forth. But the VLOOKUP function really is useful and it tells me step by step Excel how to use it. But a few things that we have to keep in mind. When we work with VLOOKUP, we have to have a first column that we can use as reference. And then we have to say that my answer will come from column 2 or column 3, it can be column 5, but a column to the right of the lookup value. So the lookup value is the first column. Now what will happen when I have a table like this and somebody comes and then they delete column 2? Then first of all, my qualification type will be lost, it will be gone. And then column 3 will become column 2, so my answers will be incorrect in my table. Now, this is just if somebody comes and make changes to your data. Or by accident, you might have deleted one of the columns. Or your table might have been 5 columns and you didn't need the information from column 2 or column B and you deleted by accident, but you forgot that you actually used this in the VLOOKUP, and then column 3 is now column 2 and column 5 is column 4. So can you see that there can be quite a mix-up? And you also always have to have your lookup value on the left-hand side. Now, when we work with index and match, we don't work with column 1, column 2, column 3. we refer to a column with the answers and a column with the lookup values. So you can actually have your degree name on the right-hand side. It doesn't have to be left of your columns where the answers will come from. For VLOOKUP, that's important. It must be to the left. Index and match, it can be column E or column H or another column to the right-hand side. Also, when we work with index and match, and let's say we had more columns here and we delete one of the columns, it will not influence my function except if that's the column with the answers in it. But let's say it was another column that I didn't need, because we do not refer to column 2 or column 3 or column 4, then we can at any time delete some information without influencing my index and match function. So that is an example of the advantages of using index and match. Okay, so otherwise index and match does exactly the same thing. So let's have a look at index and match, and let's make it simple, or try to make it a little bit more simple. Just looking for the data set. Okay, so here I've got a data set. This is this weird one, a large data set with products that shipped to different countries by different people, weird product names. So my apologies, I just got this data set from somewhere, can't even remember where. But the idea is I would like to look up the unit price of a product. So first let's make it simple and say, let's take one of the products, and I took tofu because I can't pronounce this. Okay, sorry. You could have taken any of the products or anything else, but I took tofu and I pasted here in L2. I hope you can see it. So here on the right hand side, I just paste one of the product names, and to the right hand side next to that, just going to move it a little bit to the right, I would like to see the unit price of tofu. So I'm going to use the index and match function to ask Excel, go and have a look in the unit price column, which is column H, and give me the unit price of tofu, and tofu you will find in column G, which is the product names. Okay, so let's see how this works. So I've got tofu on the left, and here I'm going to add my formula. So I'm going to say equals index. I use the index function, and now I have to show Excel where to find the answer from. Now the answer will come somewhere from column H. So I'm selecting the whole column H. So somewhere in this column, this is where my answer will come from. And I lock this, F4, and I say comma. Then I say match, because I have to match. I'm looking for the tofu, right? So I'm going to say take tofu, comma, and where will Excel look for all the product names? Because tofu is a product name, it will come from column G. So again, I select the whole column G, and I lock it, F4. And then I say comma, and then Excel wants to know, must this be an exact match or a close match? Can you remember the VLOOKUP, true or false? This time it's either 0 or 1. So 0 will be an exact match, and then I just have to close all my brackets. So let's have a look at the function again. Index, then where will the answer come from? From the unit price, column H. Then match what? Tofu. Match tofu with all the product names. So go and have a look. Where in column H will you find the cell that match tofu under product names? And there's my answer. Let's have a look. It's 23.25. So let's take something else. Something that I can pronounce. Outback Lager. Let's take this one. I'm pasting it. Or you can just type it in, but it must be exactly the same. $12. Let's take something else. Veggie spread. $43.90. Okay, so can you see that you can use index and match to look up something? Now there's 2 or 3 pages of explanation in my notes of exactly how index and match works, because index tells it to go and have a look at a column and look at a specific cell, and then the match say, now go and have a look at the different column, have a look at that cell and see the reference and provide the answer for me. So it's a bit more complicated to explain, but the idea is actually very simple. Just go and have a look. What's the unit price of a specific product and the product names you will find in this column. All right. I hope that makes sense. So let's try the VLOOKUP function. Can you remember sheet 7 that we did in the beginning? We're going to do the same thing, but this time let's use the index and match function to get the grades. Okay, so we should get the same answer, let's hope, but just use a different function. So let's see, equals index. I always start with index, and then I have to tell Excel where will the answers come from. The answers will come from this column. Okay, I would like to get the criteria, and I lock it F4, comma, match, until I see match, double click on it, then match what? The semester average. This is what I'm looking for. And match it with what? So comma, and match it with the grading criteria, the grading marks here in this table. F4, lock it again. And this time it will not be an exact match. Can you remember an exact match we'll look for 66.75 or 89.5, but we can't do it with this table, so we're going to say 1 and close our brackets, and let's see if we get the same answers. Yes, we did. Okay, so can you see that you can use index and match to do exactly the same, but index provides you with a lot more flexibility that we're going to show you just now. So let's do then the same with this large table from the student enrollments. Again, we want to add the qualification type and undergraduate, postgraduate information in this table. And I'm going to use the following table, just like we did with our VLOOKUP, to complete this table or to expand this table. But this time, just have a look. My lookup value, my degree name, is to the right hand of the answers that I'm looking for. So for the VLOOKUP, degree name must be the first column. And then the rest of the columns must be to the right of degree name. This time, degree name is at the end. It can be anywhere. And my qualification type is now in column A, and the undergrad, postgrad is in column B. Okay, so let's try the index and match function to complete this table. So I'm going to say equals index. I'm looking for the qualification type. So I go to my next table, and here's my qualification type in column A. So I select column A and I lock it, F4, comma, match. Now I have to look for I have to select the lookup value. So I go back to my original table. The lookup value is still the degree name. So take the degree name and then comma, where will Excel find the rest of the degree names? Go to the next table. It's in column C. So I select all my degree names without the heading. So from cell C2 to the rest, to the end, I use Shift, Control, arrow up or down. Lock at F4. And this time it must be an exact match. Can you see it says 1, 0, minus 1? I want an exact match, so I type in a 0 and I close my brackets. Pardon, just quickly. And a sip of water, and let's see if this is going to work. Enter, copy it down, and let's have a look. This is a BA Greek Admin honors degree. MA Greek Admin is a master's degree, PhD is a doctoral degree, so it worked out perfectly. Let's do the last one. Equals index. This time I'm looking for undergrad, postgrad. I can go back to this table, undergrad, postgrad in column B, so this is where my answer will come from. I select the column, comma, match. Then I select my lookup value, go back to my large table. I'm using the degree name again, comma. Now I have to tell Excel where will Excel look for all the degree names. So in the next table, the degree names is in the last column. So I select this column without the heading and say comma 0 because it must be an exact match, and there we have the same answers. Okay, any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Index and match is not as popular because people don't really know about it or don't use it as often, maybe because they don't understand it, but it's actually really easy to use. It's much quicker. You can look to the left or to the right. You don't have to specify column 1 or 2. You can delete information that's not needed in your lookup table, and it's really a very nice function to use. But the VLOOKUP does the same, so if that works for you, then that is perfect. But the idea is that you expand your table with as much information that you need to do your analysis, and then you continue from there. Okay, any questions before I continue? Right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at pivot tables and pivot charts. Now we can use a large data set like this, and we can say, all right, for 2014, provide me with all the female master students for agri-sciences, and you can get your data. And then you can remove all your filters and you say, okay, for animal science, show me. Okay, so maybe somebody's microphone was just on. Okay, so, but you can answer your questions from here as well. A pivot table just makes life a little bit easier, so I'd love to show you how pivot tables work. But before you always do that, first go and write down a few questions for yourself. It's easy to get lost and spend weeks on creating beautiful charts and nice reports, and then you still don't answer your question. So just to save a lot of some time, I'm all for saving time. If the sun is shining, I like to go and walk outside or on the beach or somewhere, but I don't want to spend as much time in front of the computer, not if I don't have to. So for me, I would like to write down what would I like to see. So for student enrollments, I might want to see which faculties have more female students and which have more male students. And then I would like to see if there's a movement over years. So with that in mind, I can then create a pivot table. So let's have a look at a possible pivot table that we might create from a data set like this. I'm going to show you exactly what I did here, but this is what we might call a dashboard, and a dashboard has certain features. You don't see the grid lines. Can you see the white space? Also, I've got white space on the left-hand side and a bit of white space above it. Then I have my slices, and then I have my data. So this is exactly the same data that I just looked at, but I just created a pivot table and a pivot chart. And what I wanted to see is I wanted to see the male and the female student enrollments over different years. So I used a line chart to show me a range in years. And then I selected, for this example, master's students. But it could just as well have been doctoral students. So if I click on doctoral students, I get the information, or honors students, I get different information, postgraduate certificates, and so forth. So it's very easy to select different filters without going and removing all my filters and selecting something else. Now, as soon as I also click on one of these slices, I can see the information that's relevant only to this specific selection. For example, postgraduate bachelor's, only students from the law faculty has this type of qualification, and then I can see the different programs related to this. Now, it's only because I made certain selections on my slices, which I will show you just now. But can you see how easy it is just to get certain information by just clicking on slices, and immediately my information is updated. Okay, so this is a pivot table report with a pivot table chart. At the bottom, I also have student enrollments and the percentages. Another one that I quickly want to show you, then I'm going to show you how to create something like this. There's the other one. Okay, so this one was from that weird product names. I've got here my different slices at the top. I've got year, salesperson, country, product names. And then I have two different charts here. And then I can say, okay, I would like to see for these products. So just have a look. I haven't selected all the products. I have a selection of products, and I would like to see over the years the difference in sales or shipments. And then I can say, okay, Italy, what happened in Italy? All right, so I can select Italy, and then just these products were shipped, and I can see the person that shipped these products were Andrew Fuller. If I select Denmark, immediately it's updated. Only one product was shipped, and that was Nancy, and it was in 2016. If I select Canada, so my information is updated. But can you see how easy it is to work with pivot tables and slices? Okay, so this is the end goal. How do we get to this place? Let's take our information. I've got a data set here. I'm first going to look just at the student enrollments because I think we're all familiar with it. It's easier if you understand the data. How do we create a pivot table? So first of all, I insert this data set into a table. So on the Insert tab, you will click on Table. It's already in a table, and I can see this because as soon as I click inside my information, the Table Tools tab is available. If it's not in a table, what will happen is I can create a pivot table report from this, and then later on, if my information updates in my original data set, I cannot refresh it and it will not be updated in my report. But if this is in a table and then I create a pivot table, I can later on update this original data set, original information in my table, and refresh my data, and it will be updated in my report. Okay, so it's always better to work with a table before you do your analysis. Okay, so this information is in a table. Now I'm going to click on the Insert tab in the Tables group, and I'm going to click on Pivot Table. Now, maybe just before I do this, let me just go to the top. Just have a look. My headings include academic year, faculty, department, program name, degree name, qualification type, undergrad, postgrad, gender, and I count these student enrollments because this is what I will see in my fields report on the right hand side in my pivot table. So let's go and create a pivot table. On the Insert tab in the tables, click on Pivot Table. Okay, click on Pivot Table. Then Excel will ask me what's the range. It will be table 5. Sorry, mine just expanded through for the whole screen. But usually you will see the marching ants around your data set. And then it's a good idea if you work with a large table to select a new worksheet to place your pivot table in, not the existing one, otherwise it can be quite clustered. So I always like to use a new worksheet, then I say okay. And then it looks a bit different. So what do I see here? In my fields pane on the right hand side, can you remember the headings of the different columns? Academic year, faculty, department, program name, degree name. They are all listed underneath each other. At the bottom, I have 4 quarters. So in the values area, it will be something that I can count. For example, student enrollments. It can be unit price of products. It can be the amount of products that's been ordered or shipped, but something that we can count or do some formula with it. It will end up in the values quarter on the right hand side. For the filters, it might be something that we're filtering according to. So if I only would like to look at the Arts and Social Sciences faculty, I will select faculty, drag it down to filters, and then just select arts and social sciences. And then columns and rows is how I would like to view my data. So let's start with something. You'll see on the left-hand side, this is where your information will show. So let's take count enrollments and we move it down to values. Immediately in my report, I can see 150,192. So this is the sum of all the enrollments in all the faculties and for all this information. Sorry, let me just quickly undo this. If you want to remove something and it's not in the filter, you can just drag it from your 4 quarters and then it's gone. Pivot tables, it's got so many advantages. So in the notes, you can go and have a read through all the different advantages. But I can also use this to check for spelling mistakes. For example, if I have faculties that spell differently and I drag my faculty to rows, I can immediately pick up if I've got an agri-science with a capital letter S or agri-sciences or agri-science. So if I have different spellings, then I will immediately pick it up here and I can go back to my data set, I can correct it, and then on the data tab, you can just say refresh and it will be updated here. All right, so just a quick tip. If you just quickly want to check if you've got any spelling mistakes for any of the columns, you can just drag it down to rows and you can check it, and when you're happy, you can remove it. Okay, so let's start with something. Let's start with count enrollments, and then let's use faculties again. And then let's say, now this is for all academic years. Remember, we have got quite a few academic years. Let's take the academic years to a filter. And let's say I would just like to see for a specific academic year. So if I open my drop down, if you're not familiar with it, you first have to select multiple items, then remove all, and then select an item or 2 items that you would like to select from the list. Now, there are different ways of doing it as well, but this is one of the ways. So now I've selected 2016, and I can see, okay, for 2016, this was the enrollments. If I would like to select all of them, I can just select all. And then I might say, okay, give me academic years as columns. So it really depends on what you want to see. Then you can decide to say, let's add a slicer just to see different genders. So to add a slicer, you start somewhere in your report. On the design tab, on the analyze tab, under pivot tables tools, analyze, you can select slicer. And then you have, again, all the headings from all your columns. So here you can decide to say, provide me with the gender slicer. And just for fun, let's also select undergrad, postgrad. But you can select as many as you want. And here I've got my slices. And then I can say, okay, show me the female students. And immediately my information is updated. Or I can say, show me postgraduate students, and my information is updated. Okay, so slices are really useful and handy. Then what you can do is you can also say, okay, now I would like to create a pivot table, a pivot chart. So how do I do that? I stand inside my data, and then I go insert. On the Insert tab in the Charts group, go to Pivot Chart and select a pivot chart. Then you have access to all the different charts, and you can select one that will be useful for you. So I'm just going to select a clustered column, and I'm going to say OK. And here I've got my chart. Okay, but what I actually wanted to see is a line chart to see over the different years, did the enrollments change? So this chart won't work for me, and the information in this table I should swap around. So I would rather have academic years under rows and faculties under columns, and then I can then change this chart to a different design. So under change chart type, I'm going to select a line chart. But can you see how easy it is to move your information, also to swap information, and then you can decide, okay, I don't want to see all the faculties. Let's add another slicer. And let's select faculty. And I only want to see for agri-sciences, engineering, and economic and management sciences. And immediately my information is updated. Okay, so this is not very neat because my slices are not placed at the top. I don't have my white space on the left, and my headings are a bit difficult to understand. So how do I fix this now? First of all, you can fix your headings. If I click in my my table, I can then, under values, where it says sum of count enrollments, I can click on it, and I can click on value field settings. Then I can change the cut to a different name. I can say student enrollment. So I can remove some of this information. The student enrollments. And then I also would like to change this to a number format. Remember, right at the beginning, I said we have to tell Excel, is this a number? Is this a date? What are we working with? So we are working with student numbers. So the number format I'm going to use is a number. I like to use a separator. It's just easier to see when I have 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000. And for students, we don't work with decimal places, so I can remove the decimal places. And immediately it looks different. Can you see? You can also, where it says, for instance, for example, column labels, you can say faculties. I can directly type over it and it will be updated. For row labels, I can say years or academic years. The idea is that you clean up your reports when you're happy with your data. Then the next thing, which is also quite cool, is I don't need a grand total for the columns and for the rows. So I just need one. So does it make sense to have a grand total for agri-sciences over the different years? No, not really, not what I'm looking for. I would rather add the different faculties for a specific year. So I'm going to remove some of these totals. So to do that, I can click on on design. You always work between analyze and design. So on the design tab, in the first group, it says layout. I can go to subtotals, and then I can say only show me grand totals. Show me grand totals only for the rows. So then it removes for the columns. All right. I see our time is running out. I'm having so much fun. Let me quickly show you how to change this into a dashboard. So for dashboard, they say add extra space to the left, so white space. And then usually what we do is we insert our slices at the top. So you need to add a bit more space here at the top. There are different ways of doing this. I'm just showing you the long way actually now. So I'm just adding a few empty rows here. Okay, so now I can go and say, let's add the slice here at the top. You can make it smaller, and then you can fit the next one in. So I always like to place them next to each other in different sizes. On the options tab, you can also specify the height and the width and so forth. But you add your slices one by one. You can decide to add 2 columns or 3 columns depending on how much space you have and how you would like to present this. It's always nice to make them close to the same size. You can also use your arrows and so forth. Okay, let's stay with this. Then if you don't want to show information that's not available, what you do is on the right hand, you click on the slicer, right click, slicer settings, and say hide items with no data. So when you select a certain option, it will only show information that's available with that selection. If you also don't want them to move around, because I love to move around, you click on size and properties, and here you go to properties on the right hand side and say don't move or size. You just do that for all of them. And then you can close this. You can decide to move your table to the right hand side. You can also lock this, and you can just change the design to something else if you want to. You can add a heading. So you can play around with all the things that we usually do in Excel. And then on the layout tab, you just have to stand outside of a table or the chart. You can remove your grid lines. So now we're moving towards a dashboard, and we can then select different options as we need. So I'm just quickly going to stop sharing and get back and see if we have any questions, because our time is running out. Okay, I see some people have issues that they can't see my screen or my slides. So I hope you can go back and have a look at this recording later on. Is there any questions? Because our time is up and there are so many things that I would like to show you, but I hope you have a feeling of the different things that we can do with pivot charts, pivot tables, expand our data set, clean our data set, decide on what we need. There are a bit more information in my notes that you can have a look at. 3D maps that you can create. You can actually create movement, pivot, power pivot, and power view. So really nice things that you can do. But let me know if you struggle with something, and send me questions. And thank you so much for everybody that participated, and the exercises that you have done. And you have my email address, and good luck for the rest of the year and the rest of your studies. I hope it goes really well, and have a nice and warm day further. And please complete our feedback form. That is really important. Anything else from anybody before we say goodbye? Oh, thanks, Kristen. There's the link for the feedback. Okay, thanks everybody, and have a great day further. See you again in the future.